Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Samantha Cotterill.
And I'm Anthony Wheeler. We should jump into it, huh?
Let's do it. Let's jump right in. So the deal today is bad art advice. Okay. Now, just to clarify, this is common art advice that I actually take some issue with, and I think could be bad for artists to follow this advice. So here's what we're going to go. We're going to go through. We've got 10 of them. We're going to go from 10 down to the number one, I think, most prevalent, yes, yet bad advice. And let's just sort of pick apart each one. Your experience with the advice, if you ever took it and what happened, if you decided not to take it and what happened. And we are joined today by our studio members of SVSLEARN. So they're watching us live and they're in the chat, and they got to see this horrible introduction that we practiced doing before this, which was me as Kermit, also me as Goofy, and Sam as a Southerner.
I really don't know what that was.
An inebriated banjo playing Southerner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we want to hear from you in the chat. What is the bad advice you've gotten, and how did you find out it was bad advice? So, Okay. So number 10, I guess I should say, because we're going 10 to 1. Number 10 is real artists don't use reference. Okay. Oof. Now, this is one I honestly don't know if it was ever like implicitly or explicitly said to me, like, hey, you're an artist now, you got to stop using reference. It has to just come from your imagination. But I feel like it was implied, right?
Yeah, I think it was implied in the sense that people, I would assume, expected if you're a good artist, you're someone that could just draw from memory. I think that comes from when you're young. As you're getting older, it just kind of imprints in your brain that means real artists don't need to look at anything. It just comes out of them onto canvas.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is like encoded in your DNA. It's almost like how when you come out of the womb, if you see a car driving on the highway and one of the headlights is out, you have to say padiddle, or you have to hit you've got to hit the top of the ceiling. Right. Otherwise somebody punches you. Yeah. Like I think this is just that kind of stuff that you were just born to, just born with.
Right. Like you got to feel like, oh, I wonder if it was from watching comic artists draw, like old videos of comic or animators draw, and they're just sitting down and they're like whipping out an image of Spider-Man over the buildings or something like that. And so you kind of just got this. For me, it was like, oh, they're just they're drawing from memory, they're drawing from imagination, not realizing that in order for them to do that on video, they've drawn that exact pose 100 times prior, or variations off of it. And B, not even knowing the whole story. Like, you don't know what they're seeing that you can't see in the videos. And same with online. When you're watching videos online, you don't know what the audience, the artist, not the audience. That's a new word.
You could trademark that word.
Yeah.
You could trademark that.
You and the audience. What do you think of that? But you don't know what kind of reference they have up on another monitor or on the wall in front of them. And so anyway, I think it's bad advice.
Yeah. Well, how often, if you ever see interviews or videos of behind the scenes when they're interviewing an artist, you're never seeing those moments where they're collecting their reference and they're coming and pooling their ideas together. You're just, like you said, Jake, you're just seeing that moment where they're magically drawing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you think that that's what defines you being at a successful place, is that the only way the really successful creative artists are the ones that just bleed it, and they don't don't need any reference. And it just, So I think that's a very strong misconception, because I literally use reference for every single thing I'm doing. And I don't know about either of you, but I will have on my screen. I will pull screenshots and almost have a mood board around what I'm drawing to kind of figure out where I want to go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I hosted a character design challenge workshop yesterday, and one of the big components in my 5 steps is going to find reference and being able to get all of your thoughts down onto a mood board, so then you can pursue and move on. So,
Yeah.
I think the only exception, and I'm curious if because I think Jake has had more experience watching him too, but you remember Kim Jong-gi? I think he was probably the only person on the planet who could draw just about anything without reference in front of him.
Yeah.
But that's like master, savant, ultra skilled, ultra talented, and had like the gift from God.
Right.
But I also have to assume he had a pretty cool Pinterest board too.
Yeah. Well, and
also,
Leona, who's listening, is one of the SVS listeners, just said, my phone is full of random saved pics. And I completely understand, because I always often wonder if someone found my phone, I think they'd be really confused and a little bit concerned about who I am because of all my random photos,
right.
even my Google searches for like what I want to try and figure out a pose. Right. You didn't know that I was a picture book artist, you might be like, this is one. The
FBI just has an algorithm that's like you feed in Sam's data. And it's like, oh, don't worry, she's not a psycho. She's just a children's book illustrator. Back to Kim Jong G. He what people also don't discount, or what people may discount and don't realize, is when he entered into like the public arena, where he's like super viral and popular those last few years before he died, I would say he had like a good 5-year run where everybody knew about him. And prior to that, he was more like insiders knew about him. Yeah. Right. But at that point, he was late 40s, early 50s. So, and if he started drawing in his teens or even in his 20s, I've heard interviews with him where the dude just practiced all the time. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like, I think everything that he had drawn, that you saw him drawn freely from imagination, he had probably already drawn at one point, and he was just regurgitating it.
Yep, totally.
You know? Okay, so you ready for the next one?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, here we go. You must learn the fundamentals to be successful. Okay. So for this one, I think this is something that I've heard, and it's something we teach at SVSLEARN. You got to learn the fundamentals, but let's define what success is. Okay.
I see where you're going.
Right. A lot of times, I think people see and understand that, like, oh, I have to know how to do light and shadow. I have to know perspective. I have to have all of the, like, I got to know perfect anatomy, all this stuff before I can like move on and like actually make the thing that I need to make, the thing that's going to bring me to success. And really what I think, it's one of these things that certain people, a lot of us, most of us maybe, want to just have a clear, structured path. Like, if you do this, you'll be successful. If you do this, you're going to be successful. And art really isn't that way. Like, success has a lot of different variations of it. We don't know, like, success could mean financial success. Success could mean critical success. Those two rarely line up. You know, success could mean self-esteem. Success could just mean that you've reached a certain level of ability, right? And I think there's so many different paths to those, and not all of them mean you've learned every single piece of the fundamentals. So, any of you want to speak to this or disagree with it?
I guess I think of I'm thinking of fundamentals in terms of drawing fundamentals. I wasn't thinking of it outside of a bigger scope than that. And yeah, I do think a certain amount of fundamentals is good to kind of help give you a basic framework. I just think the problem is if you go so far into learning fundamentals that that's all you do, to the point where the creativity part isn't allowed to come in. And maybe it's more a sense of that balance of learning as you go, so to speak, so that you're not just, I just worry about when illustrators starting out want to start all the basic foundational skills, which are important, but then not allowing themselves to also experiment as they're learning those fundamentals. And they can often get hung up on just getting the fundamentals to the point where that's where they're doing. Like, does that make sense? Where it's just...
Yeah, you practice forever and you just never make anything.
Well, and to the point where maybe for your work in particular, you don't need to know how this one little tiny muscle works exactly on this one section. Like, are you taking the fundamental lessons to a place that aren't really going to be helpful for where you're going? I don't know if there's a balance. And I think it's just kind of a balance.
Right. Totally. When I was a kid, there were these incredible 30-minute videos that Stan Lee, one of the grandfathers of Marvel Comics, he was doing this whole video series, and he had Todd McFarlane on one of these videos. And Todd McFarlane at that time in the 90s when I was a kid was like, it had to be one of the top 5 best artists of that generation. And he said something that stuck with me, and my little lizard brain stuck on it so much, is that he said that he spent 2 weeks figuring out how to draw an eyeball, and then 2 weeks trying to figure out how to draw an ear, and then 2 weeks how to draw hands. And he went through this whole list of his, like, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Well, when I eventually really decided to plug into this thing, to really get my fundamentals figured out, I started to use his 2-week method, but I wasn't very good at the end of those 2 weeks. So then I just kept going. Like, instead of spending 2 weeks working on that one thing, I spent a month and then 6 weeks. And then I was just no further for it. And I got so stuck. And then eventually when I gave up just a little bit, and this was years and years and years later, and just started having just a tad bit more fun, then I started to get some, and my fundamentals were still pretty terrible, but I started to get some recognition and some support online, and starting to get contracts and things like that. And then I started to realize, wait, I probably don't need to know all of, like, every single thing to still feel like I'm like part of this crew.
Yeah. And then even too, I think it can easily be something you use because you're scared or you're fearful of experimenting and doing your work. So then you kind of dive into more and more and more lessons, where I think, like I said, foundational skills are so great to have in your tool set. Yeah. And I think it's wonderful for when you're doing a drawing and you just kind of know in the back of your head how to roughly perspective do a scene, or you just, it does help bring out greater illustrations when you're working on the fly. But it's the crucial thing is to make sure that you're starting to create work while you're learning and doing those fundamentals, and not letting the fundamentals take over to a place where you're not doing it along the way. If that.
Yep. Good. Okay, I'm going to move to the next one.
Okay. Talent
is everything. Okay. This is something that I've heard where it's like this seductive thing. Like, you have to, the successful people are the ones who have talent. The any way to move ahead is because you have talent. And it can also be like this thing that can inhibit your growth, because if you recognize you don't have talent, then you could be like, well, I'll never be successful because I don't have the talent that artist has. You look at Norman Rockwell, or you look at James Jean, or you look at, any Maurice Sendak, and you're just like, man, they're so talented. That must be what causes their success. And I think it's bad because talent is super overrated. Yeah. And true, like, I guess to really understand, you have talent and you have skill.
There you go.
And those are the two sort of things. There's people who are everyone I know who's successful has skill. Only some of them also have talent. And everybody I know who's unsuccessful never never leaned into skill and just rested on that talent metric alone.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where we used to always talk about that fixed and growth mindset with that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think of it as, and I think we've talked about it before, that let's say you have this kind of arc hill towards this successful place where these are where the top-notch people are that you may never reach. There's going to be that small crew. And if you're really talented, let's say, and you start here, you've just started closer to that final destination versus someone that maybe not have that inherent talent, but they have massive drive to learn the skills.
Right.
And you could just be sitting here like, oh, I'm talented enough. It's Kermit voice. I'm talented enough. And you just don't do anything. And
is it Kermit voice?
Yeah.
Okay. Just sorry.
Anyway, this is like important. So then you're just like sitting here hanging out, coasting. And before you realize it, the person that's just constantly cranking away is just making their way closer and closer. And before you know it, they're like almost there at the top. And you just like, oh, I would just assume that talent alone was going to get me there. And oftentimes it's the people that have the skill sets, so just the determination to just be like, I'm going to grow. I'm going to get closer and closer and closer. So talent just gives you a head start.
Right.
I also think being, and I think you alluded to this, or I know you alluded to this. I also think just being like laser focused towards an end goal. Because I think if each one of us, even though we have sort of a mixture of skill and talent, if we look back at sort of our milestones in this last like 15, 20, 30 years of the things that we could do or the things that we aspired to do, I think a lot of our ability to sort of sit here and do what we do now is just the accumulation of so much of that skill. But I think it's because we were just relentless in the pursuit of being able to acquire that skill. At least I'm a product of that.
Yeah. You know, you could take a person who's willing and make them able, but it's very hard to take someone who's able and make them willing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's the important thing is are you willing to do the work it takes? Are you willing to do the practice, put in the reps, do the project, even though there's a high chance of failure, but a high chance of learning something, you know? So that's number 8. Ready for the next one?
Yep. Ready.
Number 7, you must suffer for your art. Okay. This is, and suffering is maybe a strong word, but your art must require a certain amount of sacrifices. There's like this tortured artist myth that if you didn't put time and energy and blood and sweat and tears into the project, then it's not as authentic. And I think it's bad because this can sort of glorify like burnout and can glorify bad mental health.
Yeah.
You could even lean into it and be like, you could have finished it, in a month's time, but decided to do it in a week's time because that would have required you to stay up all night and get no sleep and like, look at all this stuff that I had to do in order to accomplish this.
Yeah. And I think that kind of is something that gets established quite early on. If you think about college days, no matter what your degree is, think of all the people that would say, I pulled an all-nighter last night. I never went to sleep when you're about to take an exam. And people are like, whoa, that's like impressive. You're so hardcore. And I think it just gives you this attention of like, okay, I'm like real because I'm like up all night in the studio. I didn't sleep at all. I'm a real artist. And that's the only way to be somebody that's really good is someone that suffers, constant suffering. Yeah. But no, I'm not that. And it, like you said, it leads to complete burnout. You're miserable. You're not happy. And I do extremely well on 4 hours a day of creative work max. And that's
but now though, right? Like what about you earlier in your career? And I know Jake has a story when he had a day job and then he would sit up and grind all night on his was it Missile Mouse, yeah, on your Missile Mouse contract?
Yeah.
Because you just had to get it done. There is some level of suffering, particularly earlier in your career. Must is the word I think we're all hinging on. Like, you must suffer? No. But I do think that there are times that, especially earlier in your career, where you just gotta kind of get some stuff done, and you might suffer through that a little bit.
Yeah, that's going to happen for sure. And if you have a book deadline and you're frantically, that's outside of what I'm talking about. I'm talking in terms of more just you feeling that in order to produce work, you have to technically be suffering all the time. And I think the work of creativity is through waves, especially when you have deadlines. Yeah, you're going to have periods where you're working so hard to get this book deadline in and you're exhausted, but it doesn't mean that it has to be that every single day to be successfully working in the industry.
I like what Mabel said in the chat. She says, I create better when I have better mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health.
Yeah.
So I think too, you must suffer. There might, and suffer is synonymous, I think, in this context with sacrifice. There's sacrifices that you probably have to make for success, but maybe not necessarily for the actual, for art. Like, your art could thrive under less suffering, but sometimes that, like we're saying, the deadline, you might say yes to a project that you really want, but may not have quite enough time for, but you really want it. So you're willing to like sacrifice some time with family, sacrifice some time with friends, sacrifice some sleep for the success of that, but it isn't necessarily for the art.
Yeah.
I wonder who the most tortured artist that is most worldly recognized, and that we know their backstory and just how tortured they were, not only in their life but in their artwork, that made the biggest impact. And if you removed some of those circumstances, would their art be as transcendent as it is? But I don't have a great example of who that would be. But I know that there's got to be. There's got to be just a lot of examples of it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what Van Gogh, right? Like, that guy did not have a great life necessarily. I don't know. He may have had a great life, but the story about him may have focused too much on the tragedy in his life.
Yeah. Leyendecker.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting.
I mean, Thomas Kincaid had a terrible drinking problem that essentially killed him.
Yeah.
But he was balancing this crazy life that came from him being inebriated half the time with massive, massive success in his artistry. And you look at his art and it does not reflect this other side of him.
Yeah, all that pain.
It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody in the chat saying Van Gogh. Yep. Any artist that can drink paint water by accident.
Okay, check.
That's suffering. That is absolute suffering. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next one is say yes to everything. That's some advice that I've heard. That when a job opportunity or a art opportunity comes your way, you just say yes. You just say yes to whatever you can, because the idea is that it encourages you, especially at the beginning of your career, that you have to get experience, you have to build connections, you have to do whatever you can to open doors. But I think it's bad advice because it doesn't put you into, I think success comes from finding a niche. Like we say on here, niche to get riche, and find a niche to get riche. And if you're the guy who can do everything, that really kind of means you don't do anything. Like you don't do anything specifically. And so when somebody thinks, oh, I need an artist that does X, I know exactly who that is. I'll go to them. I think it sabotages you if you're the yes man to everything. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I think particularly early in your career, I think you have to weigh out obviously all of the benefits. I probably said yes to way more things early on because I didn't have enough experience. I didn't have a mentor to say you should or should not take these things. I think as you get kind of punched down a little bit by saying yes to things, you learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So I guess overall, I would say early in my career, I would be much more open to saying yes. Later in my career today, I say no to most everything, and I am way happier for it. I'm way happier for it, and probably less financially sound, but I'm way happier.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, I mean, I do have that privileged position to be able to say no to projects versus earlier on when maybe financially to support myself or the family, a yes is needed based on the funds that were needed to just kind of live. But as I got more successful and got to a place where I was able to say no, it's a very empowering thing to be able to say no to a project that you just truly don't feel a connection with and don't think you'll grow from. And it's okay. It's okay to say no. It's just a very hard thing to do. But once you learn how to do it, you say no a lot more.
Yeah.
A lot more.
The Mabel's just going crazy in the chat. She's cracking me up. But she says, I think we all just need the Pokemon model where we find a rival and every few level ups, we do an art battle to see if we've surpassed our rival, or we could just network.
I like art battles. I think that's more fun.
Yeah.
I think that's way more fun.
Yeah. But then she did say you make bad choices when you're desperate.
Yeah.
So that's good. And then Aaron says, well, what about the guy who paints fried eggs? That's all he does and he's super successful. Do you know that artist?
Mm-mm.
The fried egg artist? I don't either. But it sounds like, something that could work. But she says, I heard someone say you have to niche and that felt like a prison, which is interesting. I mean, if you love your niche,
there it is, right?
Why would you want to, I get that you want to experiment every once in a while and explore, but there's very few ducks in this world. And by that, I mean, he's like, where's Jake?
Whoa, left field. Whoa. Okay, keep going.
When you think about all of the different kind of animals, how many animals are there that can fly, can walk, and can swim? Ducks seem to have figured that one out, and they're super successful. But are they the best flyers? No. Are they the best swimmers? Not really. Are they the best walkers? No one's going to lose to a duck in a race. So you have to kind of decide. What's that, Sam?
I think I am a duck. It actually sounds like my kind of lifestyle. Just gonna say. I'm just saying.
But that said, ducks are very happy. I mean, if you ever see one, they're like sitting there just happy as can be. Aren't they?
Look happy to me. They're just
they look happy to me too.
Yeah. I'm just like, be a duck.
So I guess it's all trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of that, we had our next door neighbors went out of town, and the day before they left, and they're like, "Can you just watch the house? Watch the backyard." They spend the summers road tripping. We're like, "Yeah, no problem." And the day before they left, they're like, "Oh my gosh, check it out! A duck family, mommy and daddy duck, made a nest and laid eggs.
A whole clutch. That's
there
cool.
were 8 eggs next to their pool in the backyard, and so we're like, "This is so cool! This is so fun!" And a couple weeks went by, and my daughter came running into the house. She's all, they hatched. We got ducklings. We went out, and of the 8 eggs, 7 ducklings hatched. And so there's just these 7 little ducklings swimming in the pool. It's the cutest thing. But what we found a few days later was 2 of them had died. And pretty quickly, within 24 hours, they each, one by one, died. And my daughter watched one of them like wobbling. And then she came in, she's all, do ducks sleep in the water? I'm like, no, ducks don't sleep in the water. She's like, oh. So they all died. And what we realized is that baby ducks eat like mosquito larvae, and they eat little pond things, and you don't have any of that stuff in your pool because there's chlorine and
It's all chlorine.
all these things. And so there's just no food for them to eat. So
That was the most uplifting story we've ever had here on the 3 Point Perspective podcast. I'm waiting for the moral of the story.
well,
Yeah,
let me
how
just
does
finish
this
it.
connect?
And so for the next 3 or 4 days, we'd look in the backyard and the mama duck was just walking around the pool quacking and not hearing any peeps in return.
So this relates to saying,
Dude, I used to think I was the dark one here. Holy moly. The YouTube comments are going to have a field day.
Okay, so let me just say, maybe ducks aren't happy. I don't know.
oh my God.
Anyway, say yes to everything, guys.
All right. Number
Don't say it.
5.
All right, let's go to 5. You have to find your unique style. Okay, this is common art advice, and I think what we're getting here into these last few is they are a little bit more common, almost instinctual art advice, but I think hidden in them is some bad advice. And so, obviously, style is your fingerprint. It's how people are able to recognize you. But I think the key thing is the word find. And what I think really happens is you don't force a style upon you. The style finds you. You don't find it.
Yeah. And I do think, depending on your makeup on kind of how you look at the world and how you create, it also means being open to the flexibility of style changing too. Because I'm more of the camp that styles can change, or you can have a varied sense of style. I mean, I look at Lewin Pham and even Kyle Webster, and there's a bunch of artists that have a bunch of different things going for them. And I think for me, it's because if I just honed in so much on just one specific quote unquote style, I could see myself burning out and getting bored over time. And I need to change things up a little bit. That's how I am. And I think if you just focus so much on trying to find a specific style, it kind of prevents you from continuously experimenting and allowing things to evolve as they do naturally. It's a hard one for me.
Yeah.
I think too, we judge our styles so much in the moment, but I think we forget that, you know, our styles and just even our mentalities can change over a period of time, whether it's a month or a year or 2 years or 5 years. It's like we kind of just get stuck in this rut or this mindset that we've either found a thing or have not found a thing. I think there's some credence to developing your style, of which could find you, but then really leaning into it and having mastery over it, and then letting those other elements sort of creep in once the chaos is all kind of removed, and that you can just sit down, do your thing, feel really confident in it. And then I think that's where some of that other stuff can find you again. And it just kind of keeps approaching you, but it might take time, right? And that's the hard part, is our society is not good with time anymore.
No, and I think it's more when I'm seeing young, fresh out of college or young art students that are being almost feeling pressured at that stage where they have to have like, who am I? Yeah. And it almost sets upon I think, worry that you're not going to be good enough because you don't know your thing yet, and you feel this pressure to have this style figured out versus being open to the journey of it's going to take some time and something will kind of evolve as you naturally experiment and explore, and just being, Yeah,
I think we're pretty much in agreement on that one. I do think having a unique style, though, is very helpful in your career, but just to be clear on that. So, but it's I often say, like, it's something you don't find it through the windshield, you see it in the rearview mirror. Like that's when you realize, oh, I do have a style, because however it is, like the way I do proportions or eyes or this particular texture. I honestly think style transcends medium. Like,
Yeah, I do. And I think even if you yourself can't recognize it, I think how often do you feel, I mean, I'm sure you guys have done this where I'll think, oh, this doesn't even look like me, quote unquote. But then if I'm showing it to someone, they'll say, oh, it's totally, I can see you made this. I can totally tell that you did this. And then a lot of it is just because my library of interests and materials that I accrue over time tend to always I tend to pick these kinds of colors. I tend to pick things with this type of line work. And it all culminates and creates a voice. And I think it's more about finding your voice versus a style. And your voice can carry through different styles, but it's the voice that's the big one to me. And then there's different styles underneath that could happen.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, number 4. Here we go. Real artists draw every day, or create every day, or paint every day.
Yeah, not me.
Yeah.
So I think this is a popular one, and it's one that you hear often because, and I've heard it be like a drawing a day keeps the competition away. You know, I've heard artists say that. It's motivating. It encourages discipline, but the reality is, we're all complex people with very different kinds of lives, and not every day is a purely creative day. Yep. And I think what is more healthy is real artists, or a real art career has seasonality to it. So there's times of the year where you're able to focus on it more and work on it more. And then there's times where you have to do the other thing. You have to do the administrative stuff. You have to do the social stuff, the family stuff, everything that's not art. And I think that's maybe a little bit more of a healthier way to go about it than everyday
because otherwise you could really create guilt. And especially there's so many different levels I can think of here, but in terms of even parenting, or say you're going through a health crisis or stuff with kids that can be quite overwhelming, that you need to really take a step back. And there's been times where we've been through some pretty intense times, and I've had to step away for months at a time. And the hardest part is when you're going through that, you just feel that you're seeing, quote unquote, all these other illustrators drawing every single day. And you just feel like that's it. I've dropped too far behind. I'm not drawing every day, but giving yourself some grace of knowing that you will get back to that. You will create, it might take you a bit to get back into the flow of it, but that's life. There's going to be times where you don't draw every day because for whatever circumstances arrive. And when you look back at it, it really wasn't that much time. Like 4 months feels like an eternity when you're going through something like that. But then when you come out the other side, it really isn't. And even when you are in a good place creatively in drawing, for me, I do much better if I have a day where I'm just going on long hikes and walks for the day, or I'm in my garden and I'm doing but I'm still creating because things are storing in my brain. I never realized the power of time to think. I would say that 70% of my work is thinking. And I need to percolate, and I need things to sit. And that's an important part of my process. So it doesn't mean that I'm drawing every single day. And I will draw, but it's just not every day.
I think that's so underrated, what you just said. And I don't have a better way to sort of re-summarize it through my own experiences. I think that is amazing.
Yeah. I think too, everybody kind of thinks that they have to be the Batman without having the Bruce Wayne part of the equation, and that Batman cannot do the thing that he's doing without Bruce Wayne having done the thing that he does. And that is, someone's got to pay for the fuel for the Batmobile. Someone's got to pay for the repairs on the bat suit and the bat wing and all that stuff. And someone's got to
pay for the duck removal from the pool.
the duck removal from the pool, right? All that stuff. And so you sort of have to, like, I think really Sam's right. Like there's inhale and in periods of inhaling and periods of exhaling. Mm-hmm. And you got to have both. There's just balance. That said, though, I think if you can get into a daily rhythm of some sort of creativity, like that is a great place to be. But I know so many real artists or people who are really doing this as a career who just aren't there, just don't do that. And so don't feel like you have to hold yourself up to that. Like when I'm finally drawing every day, that's when I've arrived and I'm a real artist. Mm-hmm. Can I just recommend the book again? If you've listened to me over the last couple of years, I keep recommending this book, but it's Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. And in it, he talks about the seasonality approach to creativity instead of this sort of daily or weekly grind approach to it. And he outlines examples of many successful writers and different creators who you look at their journals and you look at their sort of day-to-day schedules and you look at the output of the stuff that they've made. And when you step back, you're like, wow, these people are extremely productive. Look at all these things they've written and produced. But then when you go in close and you look at like the summer, the summers leading up to that production, they were taking summers off and they were like going up into the mountains and they're just chilling and doing whatever. And then they would get back into it and work on it and have these periods of high productivity. And so I think it might be bad advice if you're thinking that's what you have to do to achieve success or to finally arrive. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So Aaron says that's the second time I've heard reference to Cal Newport. Probably got to read this one.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
And Mabel says, have you ever actually seen who's posting or creating daily? If you actually look at it, many posts are reposts, reshares, or multiple looks at the same artwork, and some people go days, weeks without posting. So, okay, next one. Number 3, just post good work and the audience will find you. All right. Now this one is, I think it's a common piece of advice. It makes sense, but I think it's a bit of a myth, right? And that is, I think the reason it's gained its popularity is because it's comforting. It's like, all I got to do is just be as good as I can be and post this good stuff. And the right person's going to see it and they're going to share it with the right person. And that quality alone is going to make me stand out in this very noisy world. And here's the thing, the internet, society, they don't reward things on merit alone. There's lots of other things that go into the factor of people finding success and for people achieving success. And it's how visible are you? How consistent are you? How good at networking are you? How good at telling the story of you as an artist are you? And I always come back to who would be more successful at a book launch? Someone who's a Hemingway of our time, who can just distill things in the perfect sentence structure and tell the story that needs to be told. They come out with a book and they're just really good at it. And then you have a so-so writer who just happens to have, 1 million really good followers on YouTube. And they both launch a book on a Tuesday. Who's going to sell more books?
Yeah.
Yeah, in our society, absolutely. Yeah, like you could have Logan Paul, share a pamphlet, and he's got 18 million people who follow him. Yeah, he's gonna absolutely move units. And I think I think on this one too, the notion of posting good work. Guess what? I think you can also post bad work, and your audience will find you. I think the underrated portion of this is the story that you tell along the way, and how that audience then understands and reacts to it. It's a lot less about the actual thing that you've done, but the story that you tell to it, or how you engage the people who are on the other side of the looking glass. And that part just doesn't get talked about nearly enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also the definition of good work as it is to you looking at your work. And I think of most of the people that are buying my books, they really, honestly, they really don't care. They're not noticing all the actual, like the exact composition that I've like, well, I had to tweak this arm just a bit because it was compositionally a little bit off. And most of the people aren't going to be picking up and going, oh, if she had only moved that composition over an inch, maybe I would have bought that book. Most people, I mean, I care. And that's why I put all the attention to that. But most people are not seeing what you're seeing. So your definition of only good work and what you think might be bad, the audience that's following you is probably not seeing any difference as much and be like, well, that looks pretty good to me. I don't know. So I don't know how to say that, but I just remember Saul Bass. I think that really renowned designer had said that. Basically it said like no one cares except me, and I'm just going to put the good stuff that I want out. But when I think about how people perceive my work, that's where I go to with that.
We're getting some pushback in the chat there from Mabel. She says, I'm not sure on this. I've heard nothing good stays hidden on the internet for long, but I also think consistency is another layer to this. So I would say you've heard of those people who are like, somehow they get a shot at fame, like something they've done goes viral. And it might be like, you know, they were really engaging in an interview or something, or they were really, they posted a thing that made the rounds. But in this day and age, that's not enough to grow an audience. That's enough to like satisfy people for 15 minutes. But you have to be consistently, like, you got to follow that up with something. You got to follow that one up with something. You have to just be consistent and really show that personality in order for that audience to really find you.
I just listened and read this incredible book by Percival Everett called James. It's not a modern day, but it's a retelling of a character in Huckleberry Finn named Jim, and the struggles that he and his family go through in the 1800s. Not only is it probably one of the best books I'll ever read by Percival Everett. Percival Everett spent 8+ months on the road talking about this book and doing interviews and doing readings and doing signings. And his efforts in that realm also then helped reviewers find it, and then librarians find it, and then booksellers find it. And then it became just this powerhouse book because of all of the effort that he put in on the back end. And I think for that, not only did he make it an amazing thing, and he's made a lot of other amazing things, he showed up, and he showed up kind of constantly and consistently. And I don't think if you show up on the regular, I don't think you have to be good. I think you can be pretty mediocre, or you can be even pretty bad at your craft. But I think if you have a natural empathy towards other humans, I think it's pretty easy to start build that community and that audience around you.
That's good.
Yep.
That's cool. All right. Number 2, never work for free. So this is advice that I've heard, like, you should, protect yourself from being exploited. You got to stand up for yourself, and you've got to do those things that promote the value of your work, right? But I think there's moments where you could be strategic, and that might mean you do some work for free, because looking at the big picture, that's going to lead to the stuff you really want to be doing, or the connection you really want to make, or the experience that you really want to have, right? Yeah. And sometimes those are more valuable than cash in your hand.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. Oh, go ahead, Anthony.
I was going to say, I had a really interesting experience come up here lately. I like to get paid for what I do. I sort of look at my time as pretty valuable, and I like to be rewarded for it. But sometimes I can also become, sort of elitist about it. I had an opportunity that came to me a while back to be part of a magazine article in a really well-respected illustration magazine, and something that I would have been like really pumped about 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Mhm.
And there wasn't compensation. They needed a little bit of help. And it was kind of a rush job. And I probably was the 18th person on the list. Let's be really honest here. And I immediately turned it down. I was just like, no, I'm not gonna stoop to this level and work for free. And guess what? I regretted it. Now my time is really valuable, and I didn't really have a lot of time in that moment. I was pretty stressed out about 100 other things. But I just thought to myself, I was like, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot. This is a thing that I would have loved to be a part of. But B, I also in that moment couldn't realize, like, sometimes you just have to do a good thing for other people and just assume the best. And that, whatever your belief is in the universe or karma or just being a good person, like sometimes you can just kind of be a good dude and go do a solid for somebody. And that will be one of those moments that I will regret for a while, is not taking that opportunity. Now, it could have been a train wreck, dudes. It could have been the worst experience. But I am disappointed that I said no as quickly as I did.
Yeah.
Right. I hear you. And recently, my recent experience with this was a guy reached out to me. He's like, I know you're busy. I know you're probably too expensive, but I'm working on this project where he was designing a robot, an actual 3D printed, like he's doing all the engineering work. And he's like, I just can't make the face look right, like on this thing. And I was like, I have 5 minutes and I know exactly how to solve this problem. And so I did sketches, downloaded the 3D, and I drew over the top of it, and I just sent them back. I'm like, hey, I really don't have time for this, but I knew I could help you out. And, here's my solution. Take it or leave it, whatever. And the guy was just like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I totally did not think he would get back to me. And so every once in a while, I like to do stuff like that. Also, just what Anthony says, there's so many people that you kind of want to get yourself into a position where you can work for free, so that you can help people that really need it. And from time to time, whether they're family, friends, or just random people who reach out to you, like that one guy. Like, I think it's good to get to that point. Sam, what do you think on this one?
I think I agree with both of you. And I do think working for free, if it's also like expanding something that you want to go into and gain connections. And I always think of that Kyle Webster interview where he started out, I'm trying to remember, and I think it was at college, and he approached I don't know if it was the radio station or whatever on campus, and he offered to make posters for free because he saw a need for them, but also saw it as a potential way of getting into this venue that he wanted to get into. And he used that as a means of growing and develop. So there's times where I think if it's kind of part of your connective growth and ways that, for sure. And then, I agree with what you both said. So
I think the liability here is that you could get into this position where you become a doormat and people walk over you. And I think that's where you have to establish your boundaries, either your personal boundaries, your professional boundaries. But I think especially me, I think we underestimate sort of the power of what we can do for other humans from time to time. And so sometimes it's a good reminder, and then you just have to use your radar to figure out if it's going to be a bad opportunity or not. So,
yeah, for sure. Okay, and our last one, the best bad advice. Is that what we're calling these? The best bad advices. Follow your passion. So, I think this one's kind of been thoroughly debunked, and I was the generation that was raised by the people who were saying this a ton. And that's follow your passion, because so many of them didn't follow their passion and ended up in jobs that they kind of hated. Right. Or thought there were so many things that they were leaving on the table when they felt like they should have been following their passion. But really what I think is I think why it's bad is what happens when you go down that path of following passion and then your passion sort of subsides. And then you have to like complete, you have to do the work without the passion, which I've been following my passion on a lot of things, and every single project has a period of time where there's no passion there and you just have to show up and do it. And so what I think the mindset needs to be is follow opportunity and bring your passion to those opportunities. Okay. So it's sort of like, do what you need to do to be successful, and become passionate about the things that you are successful and good at. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I would do I'm going to do a Jake here.
Oh,
you always
got a list?
have your little.
Do you have a list or an analogy? Which one?
It's like your Maya Angelou sayings, where you have your sayings that you say. I'm going to say, follow your curiosity. I think that might be better than following your passion, because I just think sometimes you can have this idea of, I want to be the best opera singer ever, but realistically, you will never be the best opera singer or even close to being a good opera singer. I think it's a combination of following also maybe your skill set and learning more about yourself, of what you're naturally good at in terms of what keeps your focus and your attention. And just as you're curious and trying things out, is just recognizing what parts you're kind of good at, like what you're naturally, your inclinations towards. Like, just because you have a passion for something doesn't mean that it's ultimately going to be what's your thing.
Yeah.
So do you ever see people whose passions are so specific, and it's great, right? But it's so specific. You're like, man, I don't know. More than 3 people in the world who are going to be interested in your super ultra specific passion. Because I think that's the liability, right? Like you niche. I think having a niche is important at a certain point, but then if it's so ultra specific, it's going to make your life more challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a friend tell me once, he's like, Jake, do whatever you got to do to make money, but leave comics for yourself. And I kind of apply that to this. Like, anytime that I really was focusing on comics as a vehicle, like a financial vehicle, I got so consumed by how do I make this financially successful that the comics work actually suffered. And anytime that I was just able to freely focus on comics for the joy of it, the comics actually became like fun to do, enjoyable to do. I could be passionate about them, and the comics actually were better because of it. And so I think that's kind of where I'm at with this, is like, you don't get rid of passion. You don't pack it in a box and put it on a shelf and pull it out when you need it. It's something that you always have with you, but you cannot be blind to the opportunities around you. And if there's an opportunity that arises that is able to, you're able to bring your creativity to it, be able to bring some passion to it, definitely follow that and go down that path.
Yeah. And I have to say, Austin just mentioned a funny comment. He just said, like Sam's large sculpture phase, which he is spot on, because if I had followed that passion, which for those that don't know, I left art school determined to make life-size furniture out of clay for a living, which I don't think there was really much of a market. And then the best part is one of the items was radiators. So why? Why?
Wow.
That is a passion not to follow.
But you did try to find your unique style, if we go back to some of that art advice. And you would have suffered. You would have definitely suffered.
Oh, I would have suffered.
There's probably 3 people in the world willing to pay for a clay a wood-fired, clay, ceramic, or kiln-fired radiator, but their budget really only accounts for maybe buying one of those in a lifetime. So, and how do you connect with them? And how do you compete with the 5 other people who are selling ceramic radiators?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's ADHD passions for sure. I go all in and I'm like, this is the next thing. This is the next thing. So for me, passions change and fade. And if I go all in on one thing and that's it, I'm going to burn out and I'm going to get bored. And I kind of like my passion for 3D was starting to get that way because I was going so far full in that I have other things that I also want to explore. So yeah, just kind of being mindful of just not going so far in, all in, only in, and that's it.
Yep. All right, guys. I think that's it for today's episode.
It's a good list. It's a good list.
It's a good list.
If folks want to see this list in action, and if you're listening in the car on your bicycle, this is going to be up over on YouTube, so you can see the full list in its glory.
Right.
And then you can, maybe if there's going to be an outtake, listen to Kermit Jake do the intro. So,
right.
Oh, there will be. It's got to be there. And I do have to preface to everybody that I realize that I probably repeat myself a couple times. And I'm just going to say that's what happens when you're a parent. And even when your kids are in their 20s, it's been 20 years of repeating yourself. So it's going to happen in the podcast. And I recognize that. And I realize I was saying that.
Right.
Do I have so much ADHD that I didn't even notice it? I didn't notice it at all.
Oh, I did. I noticed it. I was like, wait, I just said that.
I have so much ADHD. I didn't even hear what you just said because I was reading the...
You know what? That's funny because that happened to me when Anthony was talking about the best book ever. And I suddenly was like, oh, wait, I just totally checked out. I don't even know what he said. I'm like, what book?
I'll text it to you later. You will love it. It's so good. So good.
Also, we had such great in-studio audience today. And if you ever want to be a part of these live podcast episodes that we do, it's just, you just got to join us over at SVSLEARN, where we have our desk tier and our studio tier with a bunch of different like options and availabilities for people. I think the people joining us today are all of our studio people. And it's just great to hear their comments, to see the conversations going on there. A couple of them just left to go take the kids to the pool. So I think that's a good cue for us to wrap this up here today. So I'll let you guys know that 3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLEARN. We're becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts today were Samantha Cotterill and Anthony Wheeler and myself, Jake Parker. And I just want to shout out our team at SVSLEARN that makes all this stuff possible. So our podcast producer, Daniel Tu, our team manager, Preston Smith, our keeper of the community, Austin Shirtliff, our show notes wrangler, Lily Howell, our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott, and our illustrator, Annalise Black. Now go draw something. I'm just going to do the intro. We'll get right into it.
Sounds good.
Okay. Hold on. Let me make sure this thing's ready down here. Should I do it in Kermit's voice?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey ho, everybody.
How long can wait. How long can you sustain that?
I don't know.
Do the whole thing.
Okay,
I gotta see it.
I'll try.
Whole thing.
Hey ho, everybody. Welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Kermit the Frog.
It's me. Okay, I go next. I'm Anthony Wheeler, who's not a frog.
And I'm Sam Cotterill.
Oh my God! And are you a
Let's
banjo
get to
playing frog? Like what?
I don't know what that was. It's a Southern drawl that doesn't even sound like a Southern drawl. I don't know. That was a little sketch.
Frog. Kermit the Frog.
Oh my gosh!
I'm Kermit the Frog. I don't know. Okay, we'll do it.
Wait, do you have a Mickey Mouse as well?
No, I can't do Mickey.
No.
I can do Goofy.
Okay.
Ooh,
Okay.
let's hear Goofy.
Gosh, welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Goofy.
That was amazing. And that almost, Sam, you with your Southern accent almost sounds a little bit like a drunk Goofy.
That's what made me think of it.
That tracks. That tracks.
Any other good impressions? I don't think so.
I can do Jake.
Wait, people are leaving the live stream. No, come back. Come back.
I can do Jake. Jake will
Let's do
say,
Jake.
I have 5 things that'll get you. Here's my presentation. That's all I got.
It was an impersonation in spirit.
It's
right.
not wrong.
Yeah,
Not wrong.
Whenever I started having conversations with Jake years ago, we always had conversation in lists. So he always had them in topics. Anthony, here's topic number 1. Here's topic number 2, and then he would check them off of his list.
How's your family? Check.
Check.
How's business? Check.
Check.
Leo, what did I just walk into? You don't want to know. Okay, we'll do it for real. Here we go.
Okay.